Years back, a long while ago, I was looking for a way to make it easy on you to actually job search, to increase your results, to increase your confidence, and to increase the control in which you managed your job search. And the one thing that I notice a lot of people doing is they are out of work or they don't like their job. And what they do is they go online and they start looking for jobs, which is the absolute worst way to job search. There's nothing wrong with seeing the kind of jobs that are out there and what's available. But number one, publicly posted jobs constitute maybe 20% of all open jobs in the market for so many reasons. Any of you who think that a company is required to post a job, well, that just is flat out not true. Yes, some institutions, organizations, or whatever make it a practice to do this, and there are this many entities in the world that are legally required to do it. But there's this many who aren't, which is the majority. Like 99% of all entities that ever hire do not have to post a job. Most of the jobs that are secured, 80%, are never publicized. A lot of jobs are refilled because employees left. If I got 1,000-person company, even a modest 10% turnover means I got 100 open positions every year, even if I don't grow. And sometimes people are searching, or search firms are searching for executive positions where they want to let somebody go. People are replaced all the time. Sometimes they quit. You don't know about it. So you want to be as proactive in your job search as possible. When you're looking at what you're finding online, you're living in a world that's given to you, which is wholly limited. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you don't join a job. You join a company. You don't join a job. And the other thing is companies don't give people jobs. Systems really don't give people jobs. People give people jobs. So if you want a job search, the best way to do that is to go at the people, and more specifically, go at somebody who could give you a job, which is why my boss hunting technique has become incredibly popular. And we give away, Kara, let's do that now. We give away a couple of free boss hunting templates for you to reach out to different bosses. So what I wanted to do was, because I know how difficult job searching is, how overwhelming it can be, I wanted to create a very simple, goal-oriented, quota-oriented way for you to make sure you were staying in motion on a daily basis, working on the right activities that were going to give you the most control, that would lead to the fastest results and the greatest outcome. Okay, so I created a job search challenge, I called it, and it's very simple, and I'm going to tell you what that challenge is, and I've been running it for many, many, many years. There are early videos out from 2017, 2018, but I've been running it even before that. So what's it all about? So it's called the Job Search Challenge. It's actually, we have a registered trademark on this actual program, technique, and so on. It's identifying 3 companies a day. Now, you don't have to open up your computer and say, I need to look for 3 companies. I just want you to target 3 companies a day, every single day. Some of you may think that is an incredible feat. Others think that's laughable because you probably have a target company list of 100 companies. I'm telling you, 3 companies a day keeps it manageable, and 3 is enough. 3 people per day, meaning at each one of those companies, I want you to find a person that you can send a direct message to. And then you might say, well, what do you mean by direct message? A boss hunting message is a direct message to somebody who could potentially give you a job. A message directly to a teammate, asking them for their opinion on how much they love working there and letting them know you're in the middle of a job search and you wanted to reach in and see how they like working there. That's a direct message. If you send a message directly to the HR person or a recruiter, that's a direct message. If you send a message to me, Coach Andy, because you say, Coach Andy, I see you're connected to the head or the CEO at this startup over there. Is there any way you can introduce me? That counts. That's a message because you're moving in the direction of the 3 companies. So the people I want you to identify are somebody either within the company or somebody who can get you to somebody within the company. And then you say, well, I can't really find a boss. Find anybody. anybody at that damn company is better than the applicant trashing system, which is what I endearingly call the ATS because it's the absolute abyss. Next thing is, those are the messages that I want you to send, because I want you to send one message to each of those people, preferably those at the organization, or use your head. Is it better to send a cold message to the boss, or is it better to send a message to the guy who was the best man at your wedding who knows the boss? Right? Use your noggin here. And this is the job search challenge. Now, as you saw when I flashed up the Mile Walk Academy specials, we have a whole program related to how to do this. That's a paid program. It's $499, or it's free if you're in the job search coaching program, or this week, if you only want that program, it's $299. That's okay. You don't have to pay anything. You could go onto my YouTube channel and search for Job Search Challenge, and there's a playlist of a couple of videos that will walk you through this process. So those are varying degrees of support or education that you can get on this technique. Now, a lot of people use this technique, but what happens is when you use this technique, people say, okay, well, Andy, I'm identifying a whole bunch of companies, and I've got these companies, and I'm sending out messages, and I'm not getting responses. So there could be any number of things wrong. You might not be sending them the right companies. You might not be sending them to the right targets. Your messaging might be bad. Your resume might not be a fit. Boss hunting. I want you to think about boss hunting conceptually for a second. If I'm the head of sales, or I'm the head of the accounting department, or I'm the head of the engineering team, or I'm the head, whoever, the marketing team, if I get an email from somebody who says, I'm interested in working with you, if I open it up and you have skills and accomplishments that are in direct alignment with what I do and what I need, I'm going to want to talk to you. But if you don't, or I can't see it, I'm not going to respond. So this is my way of saying there could be many, many things wrong with what you're doing. Now, the first thing is I want you to think about doing this on a consistent basis, because I think doing it on a consistent basis is going to help you better. Number one, the cadence will help you with your confidence. It will become easier and easier. I'm a very data-driven person, so I want the feedback of what's happening as I'm reaching out to people 3 a day, 3 a day, 3 a day. At the end of the first week, that's 15 people. At the end of the second week, that's 30 people. If you want to know if you're doing it right, every 7.5 messages should get you an interview, not a response, an actual interview. So think about that. Every 7.5. That means every 3 days you should be popping up an interview. These are averages from people that are in the program. They give me their stats. They tell me who they are, what they're doing, what their results are. Can you imagine, even if you're only 50% as good as the average, that's still one interview every other week. So you're still able to generate these. But more importantly, you're actually putting yourself out there, getting some dialogue going. There are people who will respond to you just to network. There are people that will respond to you because, hey, I was just about to open up a position and I didn't know, this is great. I'd love to talk to you. Or I might be willing to trade out somebody for you. Hey, you just look way better. You just never know. You never know what's actually going on. So the other thing is I'm all about consistency, so that, because I said I'm a data-driven person, I want to give myself a chance to see what's happening, because as I take a step and I take a step and I take a step, I want to look at the data to see, do I need to make any adjustments? Every time I run a workshop or I teach lessons or whatever, I try to change a variable or two at the most, because I want to see, I have to calibrate. Well, when did we do that? What month was it? What was the topic? What was the product we were selling? What was the bonuses we were giving? Everything. What was the employment market like? We look at all that stuff, because I have to calibrate what adjustments I need to make to better teach you, to better market to you, to better sell and support you. Same kind of thing when you're going through the job search challenge. If you say, well, Andy, I could just send 15 messages out on a Monday. You could do that. But then what happens if you get a response and somebody asks a question that's a great question about something in your background that you didn't highlight, that says, hey, this is so great. Thank you for reaching out to me. I would be especially interested in knowing if you have any experience with. Well, that's a piece of data that maybe you need to get into your marketing messages and your what I call your cover letters, but were really emails that you're sending directly to people, right? Maybe you want to recalibrate that. Maybe you want to take one of your professional experience bullets out of your resume, out of the first portion of today's talk, and move it up into the highlights to show that you have exactly what they need. So having this daily consistency helps you stay in cadence, stay in motion. And what happens is it will likely give you better feedback faster so that you'll know what's happening and you can make adjustments. And I also don't want you to be bummed out or overwhelmed. So 3 a day is not too tall an order. It's staying consistent. So that's the first part of what I want to tell you. Now, I know a lot of you, I was thinking about, well, what do I want to share? What else do I want to share about this? I know a lot of you, who's used show of hands, who's used the boss hunting technique before? Steve Johnson, how are you? Sean, consistency, yes. Teresa uses it. Lisa White uses it. Tracy uses it. Come on, who uses the boss hunting technique? Give me a show of hands, any which way you want, before I go on to this next slide, because I think you're really going to like it. On day 6, Claudia, I love it. Jose Moore. Okay, so you guys are in it. Now, I know you're all having different luck, right? Some of you are like 3 for 5. Some of you are 3 for 50. And sometimes I get a person who I coach, and we talk about, say, Andy, this is great. I like your boss hunting technique. I like your job search challenge. I'm able to keep up, but I've been on this 3 weeks now. I've sent 45 messages and I've only gotten 3 responses. And you told me I should be getting an interview about every 3rd day. That's right. Okay. Now, if that's the case, I say to them, well, when you got 45, 50 companies, it's hard to know whether you're doing the right thing, whether you're targeting the right company, whether you're targeting the right unit within the company, whether you're targeting the right boss. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to be very diligent in the way that you capture the data. So as an example, let me give you a little story here. There was a woman who I was working with, and she had she had I think maybe 60 boss hunting messages sent out. And she'd gotten 5 responses. And she could work for different types of companies, like a software company, a consulting company. She had, this woman actually had healthcare experience. She could have worked for a healthcare company inside the technology unit within the healthcare company. She, could have been a hospital. She could have worked for a clinical research company. She had familiarity with this. And so all of these are different kind of companies, even though she had skills that would satiate all of them. Well, when she came to her coaching session with me, I said, can I see your company list? And I noticed that the clinical research companies were all getting back to her, but the others were not. They weren't really. And she had a lot of good researching experience that I would think a clinical research company would want. And so when we looked at the way her numbers broke up, is to think about 45 companies, except she had targeted like 8 or 9 clinical research companies, and 4 of them got back to her. So she went 50%. So she was 4 for 8, and then 0 for the remaining 37. Okay, well, it just meant that these companies, boss hunting, really liked her background, much, much more so than her messaging to the other companies. And then when I looked at, what her message was and what she was sending and to whom she was sending it, it was very clear that she should focus on clinical research companies because she was okay with any of the 4 types. So some of you say, well, it's not working as effectively as it can be, or I'm just not getting the results. I'm not sure what's wrong. The more isolated you could get the data, the faster you can make determinations like this. So one of the things I teach my job search coaching program members, and some of the stuff I do, just like with this woman in the individual coaching sessions, I wanted to bring to you. So if you're doing the job search challenge, and let's say you are really reaching out to bosses, I want you to do this. I want you to keep track of your metrics this way. Okay, so I want to give you, this is a big, important these are critical steps. So I want you to start grouping your target companies. So we're at 3 a day, 3 a day, 3 a day. But I don't want you to just say, okay, where are my 3? I want you to say, in this woman's example, Okay, these are software as a services company. These are consulting companies. You could even break those up into large consultancies and small consultancies if you want. Or you could even break them up into general consultancies, or what I had her do is break them up into, I wanted her going after consultancies that only focused on healthcare. That could be its own segment. The more isolated you could get the company type, the better. I don't want you to have 10 different segments. I just want you to have different groupings that all look similar. So far, so good. Then I want you to generate your company list by segment, not just by all companies you can think of. So in her case, she had software as services companies, but she had them in general. So I said, well, what organizations develop software for the healthcare industry? Let's isolate those, make that a group. Then consultancies, same kind of thing, because the more what I call layers, meaning the more boxes you check for an organization, the greater the likelihood that they're going to want to return your message. And so I wanted her to have, 20 companies that were software as a service in healthcare. I wanted her to have 20 companies that were consultancies for healthcare. I wanted her to have 20 hospitals. I wanted her to have 20 clinical research organizations. Makes sense? So what you're doing is then you're giving yourself groupings so that you can actually investigate who the proper target group and boss is. Well, in the software as a services organization, she was going to be going into the client services area. But in a hospital, she might have been going into the IT area. Well, the hospital, she might have been looking for the director of IT. But in a software as a service in the client services, she might have been looking for the head of client services. So these are different people. These are different people. So you want to make sure that your target group and your boss is labeled by segment so that you actually can know. Then I want you to draft your marketing messages so that you're targeting the boss, and each boss within that segment is getting a similar style message, right? So you're highlighting the assets you bring, you're highlighting the key accomplishments, right? When she talked to the clinical research organizations, she was going to highlight her understanding of clinical research and her software development skills and all this other stuff. When she was targeting the consultancy, she was highlighting, initially she was highlighting her client service IT skills. Those are also very valuable assets, but it's different because I might want to play up certain things in certain company segments. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to isolate. So as an example, for me, if we reverse engineered what I was offering to the public, well, if you're a career changer and you're investigating my programs, I need to educate you on how how I have historically solved career changer problems. What are the different problems career changers have are unique to somebody who's just an accountant who just wants to be an accountant at a different company. So the communication and the advertisement to those individuals has to be tailored to those individuals. Effectively, it's called selling to the gap. Basically, how did I solve your goals and your problems, and what do you need specifically from me? While I understand you have a job searching problem and the accountant has a job searching problem, your goal and your problems are going to be different ultimately than the person who's just trying to change companies. Well, the marketing messages that you're going to be drafting need to be tailored to the different segments. So in this woman's case, she was going to have 4 different messages that she was going to send, one to one group, one to another, and so on. Whatever marketed her best to that group. Then instead of sending all the messages to one segment, I wanted her to go across the segments. Why would we want to do that? Because I wanted her to test out to see which ones were getting back. If she would have done what I told her, if she would have done this before she saw me, she would have been able to see that the clinical research companies that were scattered all over her company list were the ones getting back to her. So she would have known that right away that there was a hot zone there. And then she could have made an adjustment and not spend as much time trying to send messages to these other targets. Make sense? Makes sense, right? So far, so good. And then let's say you go across your different groups. So if she would have sent 5 messages to the clinical researchers, 5 messages to the hospitals, 5 messages to the consultancies, 5 messages to the SaaS companies, and she could start to see a pattern that these folks are getting back to me. If she couldn't see it yet, then go 5 across again until you can draw a pattern. So what you're doing is you're ultimately looking for your hotspot, and you're going across the different segments until you can actually figure out which one is the right one for you based on demand. And you might be wondering, well, isn't it obvious who I should be reaching out to because I'm so perfect for that role? You might be so perfect for that role, but maybe that industry segment or company segment is not, or that group of companies is not really thriving right now. And there's not a lot of hiring going on for your position type. Just because you look perfect doesn't mean I have an opening at this moment, or that I'm willing to entertain that or create a position for you. But I don't want you wasting a lot of time once you can draw a conclusion. Make sense? Andy Varela says it makes sense. And then I just want you to keep iterating the job search challenge. And I know that some of you have been at the challenge for a very long time. And if you've been at the challenge for a very long time, then it's really about looking at, well, what are you targeting? Because there's going to be errors in the organizations that you are targeting, or the messaging that you're providing, or the way your resume looks. So, I mean, if we're in the middle of COVID a few years back and you're trying to target yourself to hotels, that's not going to work. Even if you're the best person at whatever you've done, or amusement parks, or whatever it was, right? That's an extreme example, but that's what some people do. And I'm telling you that if you stay consistent, you're going to give yourself a much, much better probability of being successful. But what happens, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making, there's a couple of them. So when somebody comes to me and they say, well, I'm not sure, the boss hunting's not really working. How many messages have you sent out? 10. Okay, well, that's not a lot. And then they're like, well, I sent a few out and somebody wanted to talk to me and I got all excited. So I spent all my emotional energy, my physical energy, all my researching energy, all my studying to get up on this interview. And then I talked to the recruiter and I haven't heard from anybody for 3 weeks. I know, because 3 a day is going to have you have more balls in the air. If I send a message to somebody on Monday and the following Friday I've sent my 30th message, I don't really care if that person 2 Mondays ago gets back to me, because I'm looking forward and creating more possibilities. And if you stay consistent, people are going to get back to you. But a lot of what happens is people slow down or they stop altogether. And then what happens? And then you invest time into things that you cannot control, which is interviews. You cannot control the interviews. You cannot control the pace at which the company wants to take you through the interviewing process, right? You can't control the pace of when they're going to give you the offer, or why are they not moving faster? Or they told me they were going to call me tomorrow and it's next week. What should I do? Send 3 more messages every single day. That's going to be my answer all the time. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that we talked about that, because at a minimum, you can start to see that there's ways to look at what's happening. So it's not blindly sending 3 messages each day. It's not. And if you are really struggling, really struggling, like you've been at this for months and you're not getting the bites, I'm gonna tell you, it's your targeting and it's your messaging. Meaning, it is not plain and obvious exactly how me and my organization are going to benefit from having you. I just don't understand what you do. I don't understand what you've accomplished, because I'm telling you, if that is really clear for people to see, even if they're not hiring, you're going to get bites, because people are going to want to talk to you. So I want to drive that home.